Okay. Okay, Kevin, I'm just starting to record now. I thought we had a great session there and it was great to see everyone else again. Unfortunately, we did run out of time at the end. We have to get a little bit better at timing. So I thought perhaps let's have a go at just chatting a little bit more about the ultimate success formula whilst we have our cup of tea,
Okay.
just in case that's useful for people to understand a bit more.
So maybe just yeah. So what we got you to do was to think about these 15 different aspects, and yeah, they came back with the selections, and we'll pick up on those later, as I said, I think.
What was interesting about that, Kevin, we sort of forgot to mention that, you know, they could be there's so many characteristics. And I think from people doing their online as well, when we were asking about characteristics of leadership, I mean, God, how long's the list? Likewise,
Yeah.
There's so many factors. And I think we say you could make an argument for many of those.
Yeah, true.
And I know some of the team thought that, you know, flexibility, and we added passion, and there will be other ones that aren't on there. So, you know, it was just an exercise to get us thinking and talking
and I think over the years we've had good arguments for every one of them on the program.
I think so, yeah. So then generally we sort of suggest that these are pretty,
yeah, those three kind of from that list were the ones that we were focusing on in terms of being in the ultimate success formula. And then I think we added that fourth one in, which is on the list, about rapport, which we kind of tagged on it as well.
Yeah, and that was our clever play to introduce really Tony Robbins' wonderful useful formula, which is got these 5 simple steps that are simple at one level, and yet they're simple but not simplistic. Is that the way we say it?
I think so, and you know, I'm a great believer, as you know, in that for things to work well, they need to be very simple, and then we can use them. And for me, that one's really stood the test of time, because the number of times we've used it, and the number of times, you know, literally hundreds and hundreds of times you and I have shared it with people, and then people have come back days, weeks, months later and said how big a difference it's made, and that's because they've been putting it into practice, really.
And I suppose it is true. We have a number of models that we find work incredibly well. It sort of creates a framework for us at the top of much of our coaching and our programs, and it does time and time again. People just are able to use it and pick it up. It's very good.
I think go on, you're gonna, let's get some of your thoughts on it.
Well, I was just wondering, it's like there are only 5 steps, and at each one there's sort of like a wow about it, like, oh yeah, that's why that works. It's like, you know, the first step, and I think it's your point that you put it's just having the outcome in mind. It's keeping your focus out there on what you're wanting to achieve, rather than getting caught up in the minutiae sometimes of the activity. Knowing your outcome starts, you know, business planning or anything. We sort of know the wisdom of that, but it's not enough on its own, of course.
And I think one really important thing for me about that stage is, in my experience, people often get caught up in things should be done a certain way, and one of the things that the group will get to know about us is our interest and usage of NLP. And one of the things that we talk about in NLP is something called modal operators of necessity, you know, jargon.
Nice mouthful, yeah.
But basically it's shoulds and musts and need tos and ought tos. And I think, you know, my experience is people tie themselves in bloody knots with these things and don't allow themselves that range of flexibility. And so when you say to them, you know, when you are doing this thing, why are you doing this? It was because I have to, or it's because I should do. And I think it's incredibly useful to say, what is it that you are wanting to achieve by doing this thing? Never mind you should do,
Yeah.
or you have to do, you know.
And I suppose the other one we could add in on that, Kevin, is that it's always been done this way, you know, that sort of adage, because this is the way we do it. Well, what a great question to say, well, is it actually, what are you actually trying to achieve? Things change. And if we don't keep reviewing that question, yeah. I think there's, I think something that really blew my socks off was thinking as we moved down there, it was at that massive action. I think, well, you know me, we've known each other an awful long time, and I might have been labelled a workaholic or something. I was someone who thought hard work was the way to do things, to get better. The more energy I put in, the more likely I'm going to achieve my result. Of course, sometimes extra energy does work. But if I was just ploughing along on that treadmill and not getting anywhere, not raising my head up and saying, I just put in an extra hour, or, you know, I'll get home even later tonight, I'll just put that extra time in, but just pausing and saying, actually, is this taking me to where I want to go, which is that fundamental question. And if it isn't, I could have been doing so much else with my life instead of just working harder. So that's a big lesson I've learned from it.
Particularly when you tie it in with that second part, which is know your reasons. So, you know, if you know what's important to you and for your organisation or whatever, those are the things that you can then focus on.
Yeah. I love the fact the difference for the know your reasons. At one level, that's fine, know your reasons. But then you say, but some of my outcomes don't seem to have my reasons associated with them. And I think that's where you're coming to those modal operators. You know, I just have to do it. I have to do my tax return. Okay. Do I want to do it? Ooh, not sure. But in asking that question, you know, what will it do for me? What are my reasons? Then I come to think that it will free up time for me. It will free up space. It will get rid of a burden or a monkey I have on my back until I've completed it. And then all of a sudden it shifts from that modal operator that it must do, should do, have to do. It becomes like, well, actually, it is something I want to do, because for me, it's going to free up time and space and energy for me, or for me. So I'm interpreting it. I'm taking that personal ownership in a way that I can see the benefits to myself, and that releases some pressure and actually motivates me. And I think that's what you say about that level, isn't it? It switches on the motivation if we can get that. And you said, and if it ain't doing that, why am I doing it at all? Let go of it. Let that, change it or do it.
I think the other aspect of that is that by asking what are my reasons, you can say, actually, if I don't do it, these will be the consequences that I don't want.
I probably do that bit too.
They're often valid reasons as well.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
If I don't do my tax return, you know, this will be the consequence, and I don't want that. So actually, that's a damn good reason.
And of course, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we're talking two sides of a coin that, again, we'll discuss later in the program, that towards or away from. So perhaps a little bit of both, like it removes the negative consequences for me, but it promotes the positive ones of the free time. And, you know, some of us have a preference one way or another for that. And the whole thing, you know, like sometimes we pause, we have a bit more time on programs sometimes when we share it, and we just pause it, you know, and it's like, well, why is it the ultimate success formula? And it's the ultimate success formula because of that loop. The fact that if your massive action isn't working, you build in that flexibility. There's always another way to try. There's always another possibility. But, you know, sometimes people challenge us, don't they? So why is it the ultimate success formula, really? And of course, it's only the ultimate success formula if you keep at it forever, keep pounding time into it. You know, some instances it doesn't take that, it works first time. But when we get to that looping, it can take a lot of effort. And there's another pause point to say, is this outcome worth that amount of effort? And then the choice is mine. Is it, you know, do I continue? Yeah, I'm going to give it another so long. I'm going to try another 6 different ways or whatever, and I might achieve it. But actually, if it's going to take any more than that, it's not worth it to me. But again, it's that pausing, isn't it? It gives us that reflective stops. You know, is this getting me where I want to go? So that's great, and
I
I
think
trust
the
that.
other good, the final thing to add, I would say, is I think John was making the point there. It's a good point that he'd seen those ideas reflected elsewhere, which we certainly have as well, of course.
Yes.
Which came first? Who knows? Who cares, really? But I think that is testament that that approach stands up in lots of different ways, even though it might be presented slightly differently.
Yes.
And
it was
it's common. At the end of the day, it's common sense.
What's common about common sense? I must actually, the other thing that reminded me of, it was Emma who was talking about flexibility, and again the group will know that we're strong advocates of flexibility and being able to do things in different ways. And I know she was having that debate when we were starting with the bricks, that she thought the word was a bit whimsy wumsy, and it would be interesting to continue that discussion with Emma and her sentiment towards flexibility, because I'm 100% for it. And I do recall I was a little bit nervous. There's another phrase, Kevin, about flexibility: feeling you're too pliant, that you're moved by other things, and that isn't what we mean. We're talking about choosing an approach that works given different circumstances and having that toolkit to choose from.
And I think it's been pliant in certain areas and consistent in others, and true to yourself in other ways.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll pick up on in, I think it's the call after next.
Yes, and when we do the wonderful neurological level of development. So I think my tea's almost done. You finished already?
Me too. Yeah, the Earl Grey's going down rather nicely.
Okay, well, cheers. I'll stop recording now.